The hum of the servers was a lullaby to Sarah, a familiar symphony in the late-night quiet of her home office. Outside, the city lights blurred into a soft glow against the inky sky, but inside, her world was sharp, focused, illuminated by the twin beacons of her monitor and her unwavering ambition. Sarah, a name synonymous with innovation in the competitive world of tech development, was not merely working. She was breathing life into a vision, crafting a legacy. For the past 3 years, this project had been her magnum opus, a complex, multi-layered AI-driven solution designed to revolutionize data analytics. Ethereia, she'd named it, a nod to its ethereal processing power and boundless potential. It was an intellectual Everest she had been meticulously climbing, each line of code a carefully placed step, each breakthrough a flag planted in the snow. Her office, a sanctuary of organized chaos, reflected her mind. Whiteboards covered in intricate flowcharts, stacks of research papers, empty coffee mugs, and the ever-present scent of ozone from her high-performance workstation. Sarah herself was a study in focused intensity. Her dark hair was often pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her eyes, usually a warm hazel, now gleamed with the sharp, almost predatory glint of a hunter on the verge of a discovery. She was in her element, a brilliant mind dancing effortlessly across algorithms and data structures, solving puzzles that left others bewildered. This wasn't just another project, this was Asterisk. The Asterisk Project. It represented years of relentless dedication, countless sacrificed weekends, and a profound, almost spiritual connection to the problem she sought to solve. Ethereia wasn't just a piece of software, it was an extension of her intellect, a testament to her unique way of seeing the world. Its successful launch meant not only a monumental career advancement, a partnership, perhaps, or even her own division, but also the validation of a lifetime spent pursuing knowledge and pushing boundaries. Mark, her husband of 7 years, often wandered in during these late hours, a steaming mug of herbal tea in hand, a soft, reassuring smile on his face. He was an architect, a man of clean lines and tangible structures, a stark contrast to Sarah's world of abstract logic and invisible networks. Yet, he seemed to understand, or at least appreciate, the depth of her commitment. "Still at it, my love," he'd murmur, his voice a low, comforting rumble. He'd kiss the top of her head, his hand lingering on her shoulder, a seemingly supportive gesture that always felt just a little too possessive. He'd glance at her screen, his gaze lingering on the complex diagrams, asking questions that felt a touch too detailed for casual curiosity. "How's the core algorithm coming along? Any breakthroughs with the neural network's predictive capabilities?" Sarah, immersed in her work, would often brush off the slight unease these questions stirred within her. He was her husband, after all, her biggest cheerleader. Should Asterisk be interested? Should Asterisk want to understand her world, even if it was alien to his? Yet, sometimes, when she'd explain a particularly intricate aspect, she'd catch a fleeting expression in his eyes. Not admiration, but something colder, more calculating. A glint of ambition that mirrored her own, but lacked the selfless passion that fueled her work. Mark was ambitious, fiercely so. His own career, while successful, had always been a few steps behind Sarah's meteoric rise. He'd often speak of their future, of the grand house they'd build, the lavish vacations they'd take, always attributing these dreams to the success of her Asterisk project. "When Ethereia takes off, darling, our lives will change," he'd say, his eyes distant, as if already picturing a future where her triumph somehow became a shared victory, or perhaps even more. His own, it was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in perspective, a quiet appropriation of her impending success that Sarah, in single-minded pursuit of Ethereia, was too busy to fully register. One evening, as she was painstakingly refining a critical data parsing module, she leaned back, rubbing her tired eyes. Mark stood in the doorway, framed by the soft glow of the hallway light. "You're brilliant, Sarah," he said, his voice laced with an almost unsettling reverence. Truly brilliant. Sometimes I wonder if I can even keep up." The words, meant to be complimentary, left a strange, metallic taste in her mouth. Was it genuine admiration, or was it a seed of envy, hidden beneath layers of practiced affection? She shook off the thought. It was Mark, her husband, her partner. Such thoughts were disloyal, unworthy of their bond. But the seed, once planted, had taken root, a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor beneath the foundations of her carefully constructed world. The project, her life's work, was nearing completion, and with it, an unfamiliar tension began to coil itself around the edges of her seemingly perfect life. The scent of ozone and stale coffee had become Sarah's perfume, a testament to the relentless hours she poured into Eth. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, a blur of motion, each keystroke a deliberate stroke on the canvas of her creation. The world outside the confines of her home office often faded into a distant hum. Her reality was defined by lines of code, complex algorithms, and the intricate architecture of her AI. She lived and breathed Ethereia, her dedication an unyielding force that propelled her through sleepless nights and forgotten meals. Weeks bled into months, each marked by small victories, by the thrill of a bug squashed, a function optimized, a new capability unlocked. Her passion was infectious, her excitement palpable whenever she spoke of her breakthroughs. Mark, Avery the attentive husband, was a constant, comforting presence during these intense phases. He would bring her gourmet coffee in the mornings, a freshly prepared lunch to her desk, and often a glass of wine in the evenings, gently coaxing her away from the screen for a brief respite. He'd sit beside her, listening intently, as she, fueled by the euphoria of discovery, would explain the latest advancements in her project. "I've finally cracked the multi-layered temporal prediction model," she'd exclaim, her eyes alight, tracing invisible patterns in the air. "It's exponentially more efficient, Mark, and the accuracy, it's unprecedented." He would nod, a thoughtful expression on his face, asking questions that seemed to indicate a genuine interest. "So, this temporal model, how does it integrate with the existing data streams? Is there a unique identifier for the predictive feedback loop, or is it a more fluid, adaptive integration?" His questions were precise, almost technical, far beyond the scope of a casual bystander. Sarah, flattered by his engagement, would delve deeper, revealing the intricacies of her custom-built data structures, the proprietary algorithms that formed the backbone of Eth, and the unique methodologies she had painstakingly developed to circumvent common industry challenges. She showed him diagrams, explained her logic, even walked him through snippets of code, confident in his support and discretion. Their evenings often revolved around her work. Over dinner, she'd share her frustrations, her triumphs, her hypotheses for future developments. Mark would absorb it all, his gaze unwavering, his responses always encouraging. "You're truly a visionary, Sarah. This project will change everything." He'd speak of their future with a growing intensity, painting vivid pictures of the wealth and prestige that awaited them. "Imagine, darling, a world where your genius is finally recognized on a global scale." Global scale. The subtle possessiveness in his language, the quiet emphasis on R, was a thread Sarah was too preoccupied to untangle. She saw it as a reflection of their shared life, a husband's pride in his wife's achievements. Yet, beneath the veneer of domestic tranquility, a subtle tension began to simmer. Mark's help became more pronounced. He'd offer to organize her overflowing digital files, to back up her project, to troubleshoot minor software glitches. He'd sit at her computer when she was out, ostensibly to check emails or browse the news, but his eyes would often stray to her open project folders, a faint, almost smirk playing on his lips. Sarah, catching him once, felt a prickle of discomfort. "Just tidying up for you, love," he'd said smoothly, his smile disarming. "You're so focused, you barely notice the chaos." She'd dismissed it, attributing it to his meticulous architect's nature, his need for order. But there were other moments. A whispered phone call he quickly ended when she entered the room, an unusual secrecy surrounding his own work, something he claimed was a big architectural bid that required absolute confidentiality. He spent more time in his own study, doors closed, the faint murmur of his voice sometimes filtering through the walls. She'd rationalize it, of course. He was busy, stressed, but the intuitive part of her, the part that processed subtle cues and anomalies, registered a growing dissonance. As Ethereia neared its final stages, Sarah's excitement reached a fever pitch. The presentation date was looming, a mere few weeks away. She was refining the user interface, preparing her pitch deck, meticulously ensuring every aspect was flawless. Her energy was boundless, her focus absolute. Mark, too, seemed to vibrate with an unseen energy. His questions became even more pointed, his interest in the technical minutiae almost obsessive. He'd ask about specific dependencies, about the fail-safes she'd built in, about the unique encryption protocols. "Just curious, you know," he'd say, a touch too casually. "Want to be able to brag about my brilliant wife with absolute accuracy." Sarah, blinded by her dedication and the approaching finish line, saw no deception. She saw only the reflection of her own passion in his eyes. Mistaking his calculating ambition for genuine support, she was on the precipice of achieving her life's dream, utterly vulnerable, completely trusting. The stage was set, the masterpiece almost complete, and the hidden agenda, like a predator in the shadows, was poised to strike. The surface of their relationship appeared solid, but the audience, privy to the subtle hints and lingering glances, sensed the growing cracks, the quiet storm brewing beneath the calm facade, threatening to shatter everything she held dear. The morning light, usually a gentle caress through Sarah's office window, felt harsh and unforgiving as she returned home from a final, pre-launch meeting with her core team. A wave of triumphant exhaustion washed over her. Ethereia was done, polished, perfected, ready to be unveiled to the world. C'est ad only. One last task: to upload the definitive, final version of the project files to the secure company server, complete with the presentation deck she had painstakingly crafted. With a light heart, she settled into her chair, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, a sense of profound accomplishment swelling in her chest. But as she navigated to her project folder, a cold dread began to seep into her veins. The folder was empty. Not just a few files missing, but the entire directory. Earhart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden silence in the room. Disbelief warred with a rising panic. She checked the recycling bin, her cloud backups, every conceivable location. Nothing. It was as if Ethereia, her 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears, had simply vanished into the digital ether. "No," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "No, this can't be happening." Her mind raced, grasping for rational explanations. A system glitch, a catastrophic error. Bat deep. Down, a colder, more insidious thought began to take root, chilling her to the bone. She remembered Mark's casual help, his insistent questions, the times he'd been alone in her office. A sickening knot formed in her stomach. Just as the pieces of this terrifying puzzle began to fall into place, her phone buzzed. It was an email from a trusted colleague, congratulating her on the news. "Just heard about Mark's groundbreaking presentation at the industry conference next week. His Aetheria project sounds truly revolutionary. So proud of you both." The words hit her like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. Mark's Ethereia project. The name, her name for her creation, echoed mockingly in her mind. Disbelief shattered, replaced by a cold, hard realization of profound, unimaginable betrayal. The email confirmed her darkest fears, painting a horrifying picture of calculated deceit. The world tilted on its axis, the vibrant colors of her office blurred. Of tea. Servers transformed into a mocking drone. A choked gasp escaped her lips, a sound of pure agony. The professional violation was immense. Her life's work, stolen, ripped from her grasp, just as she was about to claim her victory. But the personal betrayal was far deeper. A wound that tore through the very fabric of her being. Her husband, the man who had promised to love and cherish her, had systematically plundered her intellect, her passion, her dreams, and was now preparing to parade them as his own. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, her fingers numb as she stared at the empty project folder, then at the congratulatory email. A wave of nausea washed over her, and she stumbled to the nearest wall, bracing herself against the sudden weakness in her legs. The pain was not just emotional. It was a physical ache, a crushing weight in her chest, a burning behind her eyes that refused to release tears. It felt as though every nerve ending in her body was screaming in protest, every fiber of her being recoiling from the monstrous truth. Images flashed through her mind. Mark's attentive gaze, his precise questions, his lingering touch, his seemingly innocent offers of help, each memory, once cherished, now twisted into a grotesque mockery of love and trust. He hadn't been supporting her. He had been meticulously dissecting her work, memorizing its intricacies, preparing his heist. He had stolen not just files, but her very essence, her identity as a creator. The initial shock gave way to a searing rage, a primal scream trapped in her throat. She wanted to smash something, to tear down the walls of her perfect life that had just been revealed as a fragile facade. She wanted to confront him, to unleash the torrent of her fury, to demand answers to the unanswerable why. But even in her raw anguish, a flicker of her strategic mind, the part that had built Ethereia, began to surface. A confrontation now, fueled by emotion, would be a disaster. It would be messy, public, and would likely destroy both their careers, leaving her without her project, without her vindication. She closed her eyes, trying to regulate her ragged breathing. The betrayal was absolute, leaving her professionally violated, personally shattered, and utterly alone in a world that had suddenly become unrecognizable. The man she had shared her life with, her bed with, her dreams with, was a thief, a liar, a parasite. The weight of that knowledge was almost unbearable, threatening to crush her beneath its enormity. But amidst the ruins of her trust, a tiny, defiant spark began to glow, refusing to be extinguished. She would not be a victim. She would not let him get away with it. This was not the end of Ethereia, nor the end of Sarah. The world outside her window continued its relentless spin, oblivious to the cataclysm that had just erupted within Sarah's carefully constructed life. The initial shock had given way to a profound, bone-deep ache, a wound that throbbed with every beat of Earth. She spent the next few hours, perhaps even a day, in a state of suspended animation, moving through the motions of existence without truly living. Food tasted like ash, sleep was a distant memory, and the vibrant colors of her home had dulled to a monochrome blur. Her mind was a chaotic storm of hows and whys, each thought a jagged shard of glass tearing at her composure. Why? Why would Mark, her husband, the man she had loved and trusted implicitly, perpetrate such a heinous act? Was it ambition, envy, a twisted sense of entitlement? The questions circled endlessly, finding no answers, only deepening the abyss of her pain. She replayed every interaction, every conversation, every glance, searching for clues she had missed, for the warning signs that had been so expertly masked by his charming facade. Each memory, once a cherished moment, now felt poisoned, tainted by the bitter taste of his deception. Her first, most primal instinct was to confront him. Don unleash. The inferno of her rage, to scream the accusations that clawed at her throat, to watch his carefully constructed world crumble before her very eyes. She imagined the scene, his shock, his pathetic attempts at denial, her righteous fury. But then, a colder, more rational voice, the voice of the brilliant professional, interjected. What would that achieve? A public spectacle, a messy divorce, a scandal that would undoubtedly engulf both their careers. Her project Ethereia would be lost in the ensuing chaos, tainted by the controversy. Her reputation, painstakingly built over years, would be dragged through the mud alongside his. It would be a Pyrrhic victory, leaving her professionally devastated and emotionally bankrupt. She pictured the headlines. Tech genius's project stolen by husband in marital spat. The thought alone was enough to make her stomach churn. Her career was not just a job. It was her calling, her identity. She couldn't sacrifice Ethereia. Not after all she had. Porve into Italiano. And she wouldn't allow Mark's betrayal to define her, to reduce her to a scorned wife. She was Sarah, the innovator, the problem solver, the architect of Ethereia, and she would fight for what was hers, not with the wild abandon of a wounded animal, but with the calculated precision of a master strategist. Through her tears, a flicker of cold determination ignited. The raw, searing pain began to transmute, transforming into a formidable resolve. Her anger, rather than consuming her, became a fuel, a steady, burning ember in Ergut. She wiped her eyes, took a deep, shuddering breath, and forced herself to think. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. This was about justice, about reclaiming her intellectual property, about exposing a fraud who had dared to steal her very essence. Mark had stolen the blueprint. Yes, he had taken the finished files, the polished presentation, but he could never steal her knowledge, her understanding, her intimate connection to every line of code, every design decision, every nuanced solution within Ethereia. He could parrot her words, project her slides, but he didn't asterisk. No asterisk. He hadn't lived it, hadn't wrestled with its complexities, hadn't experienced the eureka moments that birthed its most ingenious features. That was her unwavering strength. Her secret weapon. She stood up, her legs feeling steady, despite the earthquake that had just ripped through her life. Her reflection in the darkened window showed a woman with swollen eyes, but also with a new, steely glint of resolve. The immediate confrontation was off the table. She would not give him the satisfaction of her emotional breakdown, nor the opportunity to deflect or manipulate the narrative. She would play a longer game, a more devastating one. She would not just expose his deceit. She would dismantle him, piece by painstaking piece, using the very project he had stolen as her weapon. Her mind, once a tempest of grief, began to clear, focusing. With chilling precision, she started to recall every detail of Ethereia, every hidden dependency, every subtle design choice, every ingenious workaround she had implemented. She would find the cracks in his stolen armor, the fatal flaw in his borrowed masterpiece. Mark may have taken her creation, but he had underestimated the creator. He had stolen her work, but he could never steal her genius. And that, she knew with a chilling certainty, would be his undoing. The pain was still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, but it was now overshadowed by a burning, unshakable resolve to fight for her truth, for her legacy, and for herself. News traveled fast in their professional circles, a whispering wind carrying the tidings of Mark's sudden, spectacular ascent. Barely a week after Sarah's devastating discovery, the congratulatory emails and calls started pouring in from Mark, praising his groundbreaking innovation, his visionary leadership. Mark, basking in the undeserved glow, became a caricature of success, his chest puffed out, his smile wider. His anecdotes about the countless hours I poured into Ethereia, delivered with an almost theatrical flair. Each mention of his stolen triumph was a fresh stab to Sarah's heart, a test of her burgeoning resolve. But with each painful confirmation of his fraud, her determination hardened, solidifying into a cold, calculated fury. She watched him from a distance, maintaining a facade of polite, if somewhat subdued, support. Home! She moved through their shared spaces like a ghost, her silence a shield against his oblivious cheerfulness, while Mark reveled in his stolen glory. Giving interviews and preparing for his official launch presentation, Sarah was meticulously formulating her secret plan. Her home office, once a place of joyous creation, now became a war room. She didn't touch a computer for days, afraid to confront the digital void where Ethereia once resided. Instead, she sat, surrounded by physical notebooks, old sketches, and her own profound memory, sifting through every layer of her project. She needed to find not just a flaw, but the asterisk flaw, something subtle, intricate, a nuanced dependency, or a critical design choice that only she, as the true architect, would understand or know how to activate or deactivate. It couldn't be an obvious bug, easily fixed or dismissed. It had to be something intrinsic, woven into the very fabric of Ethereia. A detail that required not just memorization, but genuine intellectual comprehension and the intuitive grasp of its creator. Hours turned into days. She retraced her steps, mentally rebuilding Ethereia from the ground up. She remembered the late nights spent wrestling with a particularly vexing challenge: the dynamic scaling of the AIS predictive algorithms in response to highly volatile, real-time data streams. It was a problem that had stumped her for weeks, a complex Gordian knot of computational logic and data integrity. Eventual solution had been elegant, uniquely her own, involving a proprietary, self-correcting feedback loop with a hidden, adaptive parameter. This parameter, which she'd playfully dubbed the chameleon key, was designed to subtly alter the algorithm's core logic based on specific environmental triggers, preventing data corruption during peak stress events while maintaining optimal performance. No one else would know about the chameleon key. It wasn't explicitly documented in the user manual, nor was it highly discoverable in the surface-level code. It was a fail-safe, a brilliant piece of adaptive engineering, accessible only through a very specific sequence of inputs or a deep understanding of its underlying purpose and triggers. Mark, in his rush to copy, in his superficial absorption of her work, would have seen it as an obscure, perhaps even redundant, piece of code. He would never grasp its critical importance, nor the delicate balance it maintained within the entire system. This was it, the linchpin of her strategy, the chameleon key. It was perfect. It wasn't a flaw in the sense of a mistake, but an unseen flaw in Mark's understanding, a critical dependency that, if left unaddressed or improperly handled, could cause a seemingly stable system to gradually degrade, or worse, trigger an unexpected, but entirely logical, system behavior that would expose his lack of true expertise. It required a creator's touch, a creator's insight. The trap began to take shape in her mind. She would not directly accuse him. Instead, she would engineer a situation where the chameleon key would demand activation or explanation, forcing Mark to confront a piece of his masterpiece that he didn't truly comprehend. His inability to articulate its function, or worse, his fumbling attempt to activate or deactivate it, would be the undeniable proof of his fraud. Sarah felt a strange calm descend upon her. The initial searing pain of betrayal was still a dull throb, but it was now overshadowed by the icy clarity of her purpose. She would have to be patient, cunning, and utterly ruthless. She would have to continue playing the role of the supportive wife, enduring his gloating and the hollow congratulations from others. Every interaction with Mark would be a performance, every word a calculated move. The emotional toll would be immense, but the prospect of justice, of reclaiming Ethereia and her own integrity, was a powerful, driving force. She would build her invisible net, thread by meticulous thread, and wait for the perfect moment to spring it. Mark thought he had stolen her masterpiece. He had, in fact, merely borrowed the brushstrokes, leaving the true artist to reveal the hidden genius he could never replicate. The following weeks were an agonizing performance for Sarah, a masterclass in emotional suppression. Mark, buoyed by the preliminary accolades and the upcoming official launch, was almost insufferable. He preened, he boasted, he lectured her on the finer points of his project, often using her own words and insights, completely oblivious to the silent storm raging within her. Sarah, however, maintained her composure with an almost terrifying discipline. Her face was a mask of placid support, her words carefully chosen to be congratulatory but "That's wonderful, Mark," she'd say, her voice devoid of inflection. "I knew you had it in you." Each sentence was a carefully placed thread in the invisible net she was weaving. Her outward behavior was a meticulously crafted illusion, designed to lull Mark into a false sense of security. She offered superficial congratulations, attended pre-launch events on his arm, even listened patiently as he rehearsed his presentation, occasionally offering generic encouragement. She acted a little overwhelmed by his genius, a little in awe, subtly reinforcing his inflated ego. He believed he had gotten away with it that her professional blindness and marital loyalty would ensure. Silence. This complacency was precisely what Sarah needed. While Mark reveled in the spotlight, Sarah was active in the shadows. She wasn't openly gathering evidence in a dramatic fashion, but rather planting seeds of doubt, making calculated, almost imperceptible moves. She revisited her personal archives, not just for the chameleon key, but for other subtle markers of her authorship, obscure technical forum posts where she discussed early theoretical challenges of Ethereia, emails to mentors detailing specific breakthroughs, or even time-stamped design documents that predated Mark's alleged creation timeline. These weren't for immediate presentation, but for the inevitable moment when her truth needed to be irrefutable. She also engaged in seemingly innocuous conversations with trusted colleagues, subtly dropping hints about the project's unique complexities or intricate interdependencies that only a true expert would fully grasp. It's remarkable, isn't it? She'd muse to a senior engineer. How Mark managed to integrate that dynamic scaling parameter so seamlessly. I always found that particular problem quite challenging. The engineer, knowing Sarah's reputation for intellectual prowess, might raise an eyebrow. A tiny seed of doubt planted. Sarah's goal was not to accuse, but to prepare the ground, to ensure that when the truth finally emerged, the audience would be receptive, primed to question Mark's claims. Mark, meanwhile, was completely oblivious. He saw Sarah's quiet demeanor as resignation, her supportive presence as validation. He grew more arrogant with each passing day, his confidence swelling to an almost grotesque degree. He'd occasionally make condescending remarks about Sarah's own career, subtly implying that her projects, while competent, lacked the vision of his Ethereia. You know, Sarah, he'd say over dinner, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Your data visualization modules are solid, but true. Innovation. Novation. A different league entirely. Sarah would just offer a tight smile, her eyes betraying none of the fire burning within. Each interaction, each feigned smile, each seemingly innocent question from Sarah was a thread in the net. She was constructing a scenario where Mark's complete lack of genuine understanding of the project, beyond superficial memorization, would be glaringly apparent. She imagined the moment he would face a challenge that required true insight, not just a rehearsed answer. His inability to navigate the nuances of the chameleon key, or to explain its profound implications, would be the undeniable proof of his fraud. The tension for the reader, and for Sarah herself, mounted with every day that passed. She was playing a dangerous game, living a double life, the emotional toll immense. But her resolve was unwavering. The net was tightening, thread by meticulous thread, preparing for the moment the predator would become the prey. Conference hall buzzed with anticipation, a symphony of hushed conversations and the clinking of glasses. The air thrummed with the energy of innovation, a stage set for triumph. Mark, impeccably dressed, stood by the podium, a charismatic smile plastered on his face. This was his moment, the public unveiling of his Ethereia, the culmination of his audacious theft. Industry leaders, potential investors, and a legion of tech enthusiasts filled the room, their eyes fixed on the man who promised to revolutionize data analytics. Sarah was there, too, seated in the third row, her presence a silent act of defiance. She wore a simple, elegant dress, her expression carefully neutral, a picture of the proud, supportive wife. But beneath that serene exterior, a maelstrom of conflicting emotions raged. Pain, sharp and visceral, still gnawed at her, seeing her life's work attributed to the man who had stolen it. Anger, cold and resolute, burned steadily, but most dominant was a fierce, strategic resolve, a quiet hum of anticipation for the trap she had meticulously set. Mark began his presentation, his voice smooth and confident, delivering the lines she had crafted, explaining the concepts she had painstakingly developed. He spoke of the AI's predictive capabilities, its dynamic scaling, its revolutionary data integration. He even used some of her favorite metaphors, her unique turns of phrase, completely unaware of the irony. the cruel mockery of her intellectual property. Audience was captivated, nodding in appreciation, murmuring accolades. Mark soaked it all in, his arrogance swelling with each undeserved triumph. He delivered a flawless performance, a master mimic, projecting an image of profound expertise. Sarah watched, her gaze unwavering. She noticed the subtle tells, the slight hesitation before answering a spontaneous question from the audience, the over-rehearsed cadence of certain explanations, the way his eyes would briefly dart to the teleprompter. For complex technical terms, he was reciting, not understanding. He was performing, not creating. To the untrained eye, he was a genius. To Sarah, he was a fraud, and she could see every crack in his polished facade. During a brief intermission, Mark was swarmed by admirers, shaking hands, exchanging business cards, accepting glowing praise. He spotted Sarah, gave her a triumphant wink, a gesture of shared victory that made her stomach clench. His success was intoxicating him, making him bolder, less cautious. He was already talking about follow-up meetings, potential partnerships, his name being whispered in the same breath as industry titans. The seeds of his downfall were being watered by his own unchecked ego. Later, during the more technical deep dive session, Mark navigated the questions with practiced ease, relying on the extensive notes and documentation Sarah had created. He projected confidence, deftly deflecting anything too specific, promising further details in upcoming white papers. His performance was convincing, and the audience seemed largely satisfied. Sarah felt the tension building within her, a coiled spring tightening with each passing minute. The timing had to be perfect. The chameleon key needed the right trigger, the right environment to expose itself. She saw colleagues, friends, even former mentors approaching Mark, their faces alight with admiration. A pang of bitterness, sharp and swift, pierced her resolve. These were her people, her community, and they were praising the man who had stolen her identity. But then, she remembered her plan, the intricate web she had woven. This was merely the calm before the storm, the height from which his fall would be most spectacular. Mark's ascent was breathtaking, a meteoric rise fueled by deceit. But Sarah knew, with every fiber of her being, that the higher he climbed on her stolen ladder, the more devastating his eventual descent would be. She remained silent, a watchful sentinel, ere composera, masking a fierce, strategic resolve. She waited for the unraveling, for the moment her invisible net would finally ensnare its unsuspecting prey. The climax of the conference arrived, a live demonstration and a high-stakes interactive Q&A session with a panel of industry experts. This was where Mark truly had to perform, where raw understanding, not just memorized facts, would be tested. The atmosphere was charged, the stakes immeasurable. Mark, radiating an almost palpable arrogance, took his place on stage, ready to field the most challenging inquiries about his He began with a live demonstration, showcasing Aetheria's core functionalities, its real-time data processing, its intuitive interface, its impressive, predictive analytics. The audience murmured appreciatively, impressed by the seamless operation. Mark narrated with practiced ease, describing features and benefits, his confidence unwavering. He handled the initial round of questions from the panel deftly, his answers polished and articulate, clearly having anticipated the more obvious technical queries. Then, it was Sarah's turn. She had meticulously planned this moment, every word, every nuance. She raised her hand, a calm, almost serene expression on her face. Mark, spotting her, offered a brief, dismissive nod, confident she would ask a benign, supportive question. He smiled, ready for a soft pitch. Sarah began, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the buzz of the room. Dynamic. Scaling parameter you implemented to manage highly volatile, real-time data streams, the one you've referred to as the chameleon key. In some of your internal documentation is truly ingenious. Could you elaborate on its adaptive logic? Specifically, how does it self-correct, during peak stress events? And what are the specific environmental triggers that initiate its core logic alteration to prevent data corruption while maintaining optimal performance? The air in the room seemed to crystallize. The question, seemingly innocuous to the general audience, was a direct hit to the heart of Mark's borrowed knowledge. It wasn't a general query. It targeted a specific, deeply intricate component that only the true creator would understand. Mark's confident smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic in his eyes. He glanced at Sarah, a cold dread beginning to seep into his composure. Note to term chameleon key. He had seen it in her notebooks, a playful name for a complex function. Had even mentioned it in passing to some colleagues, attributing it to his own innovative problem-solving. But he had never truly understood its delicate architecture, its precise function, its hidden triggers. He cleared his throat, a nervous history. "Ah, yes, the chameleon key," he stammered, his eyes darting across the panel, then back to Sarah, searching for an escape. "It's a proprietary algorithm, of course, highly complex. It essentially adapts to the data." His answer was vague, evasive, a stark contrast to his earlier articulate responses. The panel members exchanged subtle glances, a ripple of unease spreading through the room. Sarah, calm and unyielding, pressed on, her voice soft but firm. "Of course, its proprietary nature is understood, but specifically, what are the asterisk mechanisms?" Asterisk. For instance, if a sudden, anomalous surge of data were to trigger a system overload, how would the chameleon key's adaptive logic, asterisks, specifically asterisk, prevent data corruption? Is it through a reprioritization of processing queues, a dynamic allocation of computational resources, or a more fundamental alteration of the predictive model's core logic? Mark was trapped. He tried to bluff, to deflect, to rely on generic tech jargon. "It's a multifaceted approach, Sarah. A combination of optimal resource management and advanced algorithmic restructuring." Sweat beaded on his forehead. His carefully constructed facade was cracking, revealing the gaping void of his true ignorance. He couldn't provide genuine insights, couldn't articulate the nuances that defined the chameleon key, because he hadn't created it, hadn't wrestled with its complexities, hadn't experienced the brilliant spark that brought it to life. The audience, sensing his struggle, began to lean forward, their initial admiration morphing into confusion, then doubt. The unraveling had begun. The silence in the conference hall was deafening, punctuated only by Mark's increasingly frantic attempts to salvage his crumbling performance. His face was pale, his earlier arrogance replaced by a raw, desperate fear. He stammered, repeated himself, and finally, resorting to pure aggression, snapped, "Look, Sarah, these are highly technical details for a specialist deep dive, not a public forum. Perhaps you'd like to take the stage and explain it yourself." The challenge, meant to intimidate, was his final, fatal mistake. Sarah rose, a quiet dignity in her posture, her gaze unwavering as she met Mark's panicked eyes. "I would be glad to, Mark," she said, her voice clear and resonant, carrying to every corner of the room. "Because I designed it." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Mark's eyes widened in disbelief, his mouth agape. She walked to the podium, taking her place beside the projector, her fingers already dancing across the keyboard, accessing her own pre-prepared presentation. "The chameleon key," Sarah began, her voice calm and authoritative, "is not merely an adaptive parameter. It's a proprietary, self-correcting feedback loop designed to address the specific challenge of dynamic scaling in highly volatile, real-time data environments. It operates on a principle I developed called contextual recursion, which allows the AI's predictive model to fundamentally alter its core logic based on specific environmental triggers, preventing data corruption without sacrificing performance." As she spoke, she pulled up a series of complex diagrams, illustrating the intricate architecture of the chameleon key. She showed lines of code, meticulously explaining each function, each dependency, each She detailed the specific sequence of inputs required to activate and deactivate it, and then, with breathtaking confidence, she performed a live simulation. She introduced a simulated anomalous surge of data, demonstrating how the chameleon key instantly reconfigured the system, displayed the integrity of the data, and maintained optimal output. The system, under her command, sang with efficiency and precision, a stark contrast to Mark's earlier, vague descriptions. Furthermore, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength, the initial concept for this contextual recursion model was first outlined in a research paper I presented at the Global AI Summit 3 years ago, a full year before Mark had any involvement with my project. She displayed the abstract of that paper on screen, complete with her name and the conference details. Then, she showed internal project logs, time-stamped and encrypted, detailing the development of the chameleon key from its theoretical inception to its final implementation, all bearing her digital signature, all predating Mark's alleged timeline. The truth, unveiled with such undeniable clarity and irrefutable evidence, hit the audience like a thunderclap. The murmurs of confusion turned into gasps of shock, then a rising tide of outrage. Mark's lies dramatically unraveled. Before their very eyes, he stood frozen, his face ashen, his professional mask utterly shattered. He tried to interrupt, to deny, to claim a misunderstanding, but his words were drowned out by the growing clamor in the room. His lack of true understanding, his intellectual theft, was laid bare for all to see. Sarah concluded, her voice unwavering. Ethereia is my life's work. Every line of code, every innovation, every solution was born from my intellect and dedication. Mark merely presented my work as his own. She looked directly at him, a quiet, devastating triumph in her eyes. You may have stolen my files, Mark, but you could never steal my knowledge, my understanding, or my connection to my own creation. The panel members, furious at being misled, began to dissect Mark's fraud. His attempts at denial were pathetic, quickly exposed by Sarah's profound, intimate knowledge of every facet of the project. The room erupted. Mark's public humiliation was absolute, his professional downfall swift and spectacular. The truth, strategically revealed and powerfully demonstrated, had not just prevailed, it had decimated him. The aftermath was swift and brutal, a whirlwind of consequences that swept through Mark's life with the force of a Category 5 hurricane. Before the conference even officially concluded, he was escorted from the premises by security, his name already being whispered with a mixture of disgust and schadenfreude throughout the tech community. The company, reeling from the scandal and the egregious violation of intellectual property, launched an immediate internal investigation. Within 24 hours, Mark's termination was confirmed, effective immediately. His professional reputation, meticulously built over years, lay in ruins, blackened by the indelible stain of fraud. Opportunities vanished, doors slammed shut, and the industry effectively blacklisted him. The architects of his past collaborations quietly distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with such a spectacular and unethical downfall. For Sarah, the immediate emotional impact was a complex tapestry of exhaustion, relief, and a lingering, profound sadness. The vindication was sweet, a powerful antidote to the poison of betrayal, but the wound of Mark's deceit ran deep, leaving an emotional bruise that would take time to heal. She felt a crushing fatigue, the immense strain of maintaining her composure and executing her intricate plan finally lifting. But, amidst the emotional wreckage, there was also a profound sense of reclaiming herself, her integrity, and her professional identity. She wasted no time in initiating divorce proceedings. The marriage, built on a foundation of trust that Mark had systematically dismantled, was irrevocably shattered. There was no room for reconciliation, no possibility of forgiveness for such a fundamental betrayal. The legal process would be arduous, messy, but necessary. She moved out of their shared home, seeking refuge in a temporary apartment, needing physical distance from the place where her dreams had been stolen. and her trust so brutally violated. The company, now fully aware of the extent of Mark's deception and Sarah's brilliant resilience, acted quickly to rectify the injustice. Ethereia was officially and unequivocally returned to its rightful creator. Sarah was reinstated as the project lead, but more than that, she was offered a substantial promotion. A new division built around Ethereia, potential, and a public apology from the CEO himself. Her colleagues, initially stunned, rallied around her, offering support, admiration, and a renewed respect for her quiet strength and intellectual prowess. Her reputation, far from being tarnished, soared to unprecedented heights. She was no longer just a brilliant professional. She was a symbol of integrity, a testament to the power of truth. The arduous process of reclaiming her project began. She revisited Ethereia, not just as a piece of software, but as a symbol of her fight, her resilience. She meticulously reviewed every line of code, ensuring no hidden backdoors or manipulations from Mark. She poured her renewed energy into its launch, now with an even deeper sense of purpose. Ethereia, truly hers again, became not just an innovation in data analytics, but a testament to her unwavering spirit. The journey of healing was long. The scars of betrayal would always remain, a quiet reminder of the dark side of ambition. But Sarah emerged stronger, wiser, and more resolute than ever. She learned to trust her instincts, to guard her intellectual property with fierce vigilance, and to recognize the subtle hints of hidden agendas. Her career flourished, and Ethereia, under her true stewardship, achieved the groundbreaking success she had always envisioned. It was a powerful story of resilience, the courage to fight for truth, and the undeniable triumph of integrity over betrayal, proving that the truth, when strategically revealed, always, irrevocably, prevails. The dust of the scandal settled slowly, leaving behind a landscape irrevocably altered. Mark's public disgrace had been absolute, a spectacle that reverberated through the tech world for weeks. His name became a cautionary tale, a whisper of corporate villainy that served as a stark contrast to Sarah's soaring reputation. For her, the immediate aftermath was a blur of legal meetings, corporate apologies, and the Herculean task of disentangling her life from Mark's. The divorce proceedings, though emotionally draining, were surprisingly swift, given the irrefutable evidence of his professional and personal betrayal. The shared home, once a sanctuary filled with the promise of a future, now felt tainted, a monument to a love that had never truly existed in the form she believed. She left it behind without a backward glance, seeking solace in a temporary apartment that, though sterile, offered a clean slate, a quiet space to simply be Sarah again. Yet, even amidst the turmoil, a profound sense of liberation began to bloom within her. The crushing weight of Mark's deceit, the constant, low-level hum of unease she'd subconsciously carried, had lifted. She could breathe again, truly breathe. For the first time in years, the company, determined to rectify its grievous oversight and eager to capitalize on Ethereia's potential under its true visionary, moved with unprecedented speed. Not only was Ethereia unequivocally returned to her, but Sarah was offered a substantial promotion. A new, independently funded division built entirely around her project, and a seat on the executive board. The CEO himself extended a public, heartfelt apology, acknowledging her integrity and resilience as much as her genius. Her colleagues, initially awestruck by the drama, rallied around her with genuine admiration, their respect for her quiet strength palpable. Her first step in this new chapter was to reclaim Ethereia, not just legally, but spiritually. She returned to her former office, now meticulously cleaned and reorganized by the company in a gesture of deference. The empty project folder, once a gaping wound, was now filled with the definitive, secure version of her masterpiece. She spent days, sometimes nights, meticulously reviewing every line of code, every design choice, ensuring no hidden back doors, no subtle manipulations Mark might have attempted. It was a cathartic process, a reclaiming of her intellectual territory, a physical manifestation of her renewed ownership. Each bug squashed, each optimization made, felt like a defiant assertion of her brilliance. A quiet victory over the shadow of betrayal. The official launch of Ethereia, just a few months later, was a monumental event, devoid of the forced grandeur and underlying tension that had plagued Mark's fraudulent presentation. This time, Sarah stood on stage, not as a victim or a performer, but as the undeniable creator, her presence radiating quiet, authority, and genuine passion. The room was packed with industry titans, media representatives, and eager tech enthusiasts, all there to witness the unveiling of a truly groundbreaking innovation. Her presentation was a master class in clarity and vision, delivered with an easy confidence born of deep, intimate knowledge. She spoke not just of algorithms and data streams, but of the transformative potential of Ethereia, her voice resonating with the very passion that had fueled its creation. She demonstrated the Ethereia's capabilities with effortless grace, showcasing its dynamic scaling, its predictive accuracy, and its intuitive interface. The live demonstration was flawless, each complex function responding with breathtaking precision. When she touched upon the chameleon key, explaining its intricate contextual recursion model, she did so with such profound understanding and elegant simplicity that the audience was spellbound. There was no need for grandstanding, no vague deflections. These was pure, unadulterated genius, presented by its rightful author. The applause that erupted was thunderous, genuine, and prolonged, a standing ovation that echoed her hard-won victory. It was the sound of vindication, the sweet symphony of earned recognition. The professional accolades poured in. Ethereia was hailed as a paradigm shift in data analytics, a testament to Sarah's innovative spirit. She became a sought-after speaker, her insights shaping industry discourse. Her new division flourished, attracting top talent eager to work under her visionary leadership. Media profiles celebrated her as a symbol of integrity and resilience, her story inspiring countless aspiring innovators. Sarah, once focused solely on the code, now embraced her role as a leader, a mentor, and an advocate for ethical innovation. Her career, forged in the crucible of betrayal, ascended to heights she had only dreamed of, fueled by her talent and unwavering commitment to truth. Building a new life, however, extended beyond the professional. She found a beautiful, sunlit loft apartment with large windows overlooking the city skyline, a stark contrast to the closed-off mansion she'd shared with Mark. It was a space that felt entirely her own, filled with art she loved, books she cherished, and the quiet hum of her updated workstation, now a source of joy, not hidden anxiety. She reconnected with old friends, rediscovered her love for hiking, and even adopted a playful rescue dog named Pixa, whose boundless energy brought unexpected laughter into her life. The silence that had once felt heavy with grief now offered a peaceful canvas for her own thoughts, her own dreams. There were still moments, of course, when the phantom ache of betrayal resurfaced, a fleeting memory, a poignant song, a casual glance at a couple holding hands. The scars remained, a quiet reminder of the dark side of ambition and the fragility of trust. But they no longer defined her. Instead, they served as a testament to her resilience, a deep well of wisdom drawn from the depths of her pain. She had learned invaluable lessons: to trust her instincts, to guard her intellectual property with fierce vigilance, and to recognize the subtle hints of hidden agendas beneath charming facades. The experience, though harrowing, had forged her into a stronger, wiser, and more discerning woman. Mark's name faded into obscurity, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones, his once promising career utterly destroyed. His attempts to re-enter the industry were met with cold disdain, his professional life a barren wasteland. Sarah, by contrast, continued to thrive, her future stretching out before her, bright with possibility. She was no longer Sarah, Mark's wife, or Sarah, the victim of a grand theft. She was Sarah, the innovator, the leader, the architect of a new future, her own future. She looked out from her loft window, the city lights twinkling like 1,000 promises. Ethereia, under her true stewardship, was not just a groundbreaking success, it was a powerful testament to her unwavering spirit, a beacon of integrity that proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the truth, when strategically revealed, always, irrevocably prevails.